Hi guys, Joe Mendoza here in sunny San Diego. Welcome to my show. Thanks so much for watching, subscribing, and sharing the great words of wisdom here on the show. Today, ladies and gentlemen, coming from Nashville, Tennessee, Tyler Cobble. He's got incredible experience, great portfolio. He's got a commercial real estate brokerage. He does development. Welcome to the show, Tyler. How are you?
Joe, thank you so much for having me on, man. I'm doing well. It is a nice sunny day here in Nashville as well, which is pretty nice. It's been overcast and rainy and snowy for the past couple of weeks. So I'm very grateful for that.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to have you on the show. So let's take the audience a little bit back before real estate. What were you doing and how did you transition in?
Man, I was a college dropout. I wasn't doing anything, which surprises a lot of people. But I guess that's the beauty of real estate, right? Anybody from any kind of background can jump into this and be successful. So I went to a private high school here in Nashville, got a phenomenal education there, and as soon as I graduated, went into direct sales with a company called Cutco Cutlery. And so I was selling knives, baby, and ended up doing really well with that. I made about $30,000 that summer between senior year of high school and freshman year of college. And that's a lot of money for a freshman in college. And I kind of realized I've got a knack for sales, just sitting down and having conversations with people. And I loved doing it. And I was really good at it. And so I was sitting in class one day and, thinking, well, I'm taking a class that I took back in 8th grade. What am I doing here? And so I annualized my income over the summer, which was 3 months. I made 30 grand. Like, man, I could be making 6 figures if I just went and, did sales full time. So dropped out, moved back to Nashville, started working as a project manager for my grandfather's construction company. And honestly, was only there for about 3 months before a boutique developer here in Nashville that I had actually sold a set of Cutco knives to for his beach house down in Florida, called me up and said, "Hey man, I hear you're back in Nashville. And I've got, some commercial properties that I just feel like the large national brokerages aren't giving me the attention I deserve. And I'm going to bring somebody in-house, would you consider it?" So I said, absolutely. And, kind of not realizing the opportunity I was being given, he paid for me to get my real estate license and gave me a 150,000 square foot shopping center anchored by World Market, TJ Maxx, Target to lease up, and a 57,000 square foot mid-rise in Midtown. As a 21-year-old kid who had just gotten his real estate license, that's a pretty big, head first dive. So, that's kind of where we've taken it from there. I started off in the leasing side and worked with a boutique developer worked with them for 4.5 years. And so that's kind of how I learned that aspect of it. So in February of 2018, wrote a book called Open for Business, The Insider's Guide to Leasing Commercial Real Estate. And about the same week, decided to launch my own brokerage. So left, started my firm, started a commercial property management company about 6 months later. And 6 months after that, I started syndicating my own deals.
That's awesome. What a great story, Tyler. I mean, talk about being at the right place at the right time, man.
Oh, no kidding.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So let's talk about to the audience, because I've got a mixed audience here. Some want to be agents, some are investors, some want to be investors. This journey of yours, because it sounds like you're doing a little bit of transitioning, or maybe you're just putting two hats on like myself. I have a realtor hat on sometimes I have the investor hat on. What has been some of the challenges with this kind of market that we're having now?
Yeah, I'm a deal junkie, so I definitely wear multiple hats. I love, brokering deals for other people. I love doing my own deals. So yeah, I mean, some of the challenges, everybody thinks it's so funny when you're not in real estate, you look at a market like what we've had for the last 10 years. Oh, real estate's so hot. Nashville's number 3 on the list of fastest growing cities in America. You must be doing really well. Well, the majority of agents in a hot upswing market like this aren't really doing that well because there's just not a lot of property available out there. They're all fighting over listings. There's almost nothing available for sale. You're trying to dig up properties off market. So it really kind of shows you, the strongest of the strong survive. So, we've been doing incredibly well, but that's because I don't rely on the MLS or LoopNet or whatever to bring me my listings. I mean, we were very proactive about finding off-market deals, which has served us incredibly well. So I would say, it's actually more difficult in a very hot market to be successful because, with high demand on the buyer side comes low offerings on the seller side.
That's right. Now, how big is your current team?
So I've got 2 guys on my team. So it's me. Then I've got a junior agent who I'm kind of training to be just a cold calling machine. And then I've got an investment sales guy who's got a few years experience.
That's fantastic. Now, what are the asset classes that you're focusing on the most as far as the brokerage side?
I would say the ones that we focus on the most, like above and beyond, would be office and retail. We do some industrial. We don't do any multifamily. So multifamily is a very specific niche. I mean, it's so different from office, retail, industrial, and even single family. So the guys that play in that field, they hyper specialize in that. I mean, there's, CBRE sells like 80 or 90% of the multifamily in our market. So we just don't even compete in that. But office retail, we dominate within our neighborhoods.
That's fantastic, Tyler. Now, I was on your website not too long ago, and you have a couple different things on the underwriting. One's for commercial and one's for multifamily. And you just said it a minute ago, there is a difference. Now, for the audience that are looking at these different asset classes, how's the underwriting different from commercial versus multifamily?
Yeah, it's very different. I actually created those spreadsheets in partnership with Bruce Peterson, the apartment guy who's been on your show before. He's a good buddy of mine. He's a mentor. He's a partner in my property management company and some deals. When I first got into underwriting, Bruce was kind of showing me, hey, here's my spreadsheet. Here's how I underwrite multifamily deals. And I was looking at that and I was just thinking to myself, wow, this is a pretty robust piece of software to be able to come in and understand the math on a multifamily deal. But the more that I played around with it, I was like, okay, so this is hyper functional for multifamily. I can't use this on office, retail, industrial properties at all. It doesn't work. Multifamily is just such a different beast. You've got, it's probably similar to office space in the sense that, the tenant pays you one, lump sum check, and then you pay all the expenses. But in many office, retail, and industrial properties, the leases are all different. They're not really set up like that. The tenants will actually pay some of the expenses, and your vacancy rates can be a little bit different. And so there's all sorts of different, the how you price things is different, right? Like, multifamily, everybody talks about, $2 a foot a month, right? So you're saying, this unit, if it's 500 square feet, $2 a month, we'll rent for $1,000 a month. In commercial, at least in Nashville, we actually say $24 a square foot a year. So we don't use the same terminology. And so I had to go through and kind of rework his spreadsheet to make sure that it would fit for that. And then, of course, development is a totally different beast. You need a completely different set of underwriting spreadsheets for development projects. So they're very different.
Now, what are some of the largest projects you've been taking on recently as far as doors, square footage? You mentioned that lease. That was massive. How about the investment side? What are some of the big projects you're taking on right now?
Yeah, so we just closed on a little over 3 acres of land, about 5 to 7 minutes outside of downtown Nashville. That was a $5 million purchase price. It'll end up being about a $19 to $20 million development deal. We're doing 6 buildings, right? The current iteration is 6 buildings, about 57,000 square feet of office, retail, and restaurant space with an event venue. In March, I'm closing on an $18 million shopping center, about 15 minutes outside of downtown Nashville. That'll end up being probably a $300 to $500 million development because we are master planning it for essentially the downtown core of that neighborhood. There's no downtown really. So it currently has a 350,000 square foot shopping center, and our plans show about 1.5 million square feet of office, retail, and multifamily. That's
great. Those are some big projects, Tyler. Now, when you build out these pro formas, what are some of the different metrics that you use to build them out for a projection of 3, 5, 7, maybe 10 years? What are some of your key metrics?
Yeah, key metrics would definitely be vacancy rates, right? Especially the bigger the project is, you've got to really dial in how you're going to lease it up or keep it leased. I would say your operating expenses are pretty big too, because you've got to keep those in check, or else the thing about commercial real estate is that it's based on cap rates, which is based on the net amount of money that the property is bringing at you on an annual basis. So if your operating expenses increase just so slightly, it'll have a massive impact on the valuation of the property. So it's critical that you keep your expenses low. Of course, any interest only periods or your interest rate, if that's going to change at any point, is pretty critical. But on the investor side, we pitch our investors on the IRR, the total annualized return, and then just your equity multiple. Investors like to look at different kinds of returns for different reasons. We tend to, like most parties, will look at the IRR, but I don't think that the IRR is the best, return metric to really be looking at, because you can juice an IRR, right? Like, I could actually give you a 6% return every year, which is, it's okay, but it's not great. But I can tell you, it's a 15% IRR because in 10 years, we're going to sell it and it's going to be really good then. It's like, okay, well, so the majority of your returns will come in 10 years, not each year. So total annualized return is pretty great because it shows you, okay, well, over 5 years, I averaged this each year. So some investors love that. And then the equity multiple just shows you how much money you get back. If I put it, $100,000 and it's a 2.15x equity multiple over 4 years, I'll get $215,000 back. So every investor has kind of their own thing, but those are the main numbers that we look at.
That's perfect, Tyler. Now let's talk about lenders. Some lenders are asking for major reserves lately. What are you seeing? Are you seeing 6 months, 12 months? What kind of reserve minimums are you seeing?
That's a great question. So on the multifamily front, I think that's pretty common. So 6 to 12 months of reserves seems to be what a lot of the lenders are requiring. Fortunately, in commercial, they don't really care. It's not really based on that. Now, commercial is very different on the lending side because I have to sign a personal guarantee typically, which you don't often have to do on multifamily loans. So it's a very different set of lending. But there's pros and cons to each, right? Like I don't have to worry about 12 months of reserve on my projects, but I do have to sign a personal guarantee. So I guess it just kind of depends on how confident you are in the project, right? I mean, some projects you probably wish you could just put up 12 months and not sign personal guarantees, and sometimes it swings the other way. But as long as we're hyper confident in the project and where the market is headed, limited personal guarantees make sense for us. So it just depends.
Thank you. Now, as far as marketplaces, are you just investing in Nashville, or are you going outside into other marketplaces?
So we're very focused on Nashville, and specifically within a 15-minute radius of Nashville. I think the urban core has a lot of room for growth. Nashville is anti-transit for whatever reason. We keep voting no on transit measures. So as traffic is going to increase as people move here, and everybody's going to want to live closer to downtown. So we're very focused there. Now, that being said, I am considering tertiary markets around Nashville. So I just bought a 9-story office tower in Chattanooga, in downtown Chattanooga. That's where I was yesterday when we spoke. And I love that market because it's very similar to the market where I live in and where my office is, called East Nashville. It's very hip. It's got a lot of cool food and beverage concepts. There's a lot of startups and technology kind of stuff going on, but it's on a much larger scale. It's like actually the whole city as opposed to just a neighborhood. So that's pretty exciting to me. So, I'm focused on Nashville. We're looking at some tertiary markets. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I'll start expanding into other secondary markets outside of Nashville, Raleigh, Durham, Austin, Texas. But for now, we're going to probably stay put.
That's awesome, Tyler. What's the big goal here? What's your kind of end game? What are you targeting? 10,000 doors, X amount of square feet? I mean, it's great to have goals. What are some of your goals?
Yeah, so I mean, my overarching goal, the biggest goal that I have, is to have the most architecturally significant tower on the Nashville skyline. I think that's a big mark of, I was here, we had fun. So I've already started planning that in my head. I've already visualized what the tower looks like. So that's always fun to think about, because to me, that's the end game. When I was growing up as a little kid, the Batman building in Nashville is so iconic that small businesses here, or even big businesses, have it in their logo. I mean, how cool is that, right? Like, these guys designed and built this building downtown, and it had such an impact on the city that people put it as a symbol of their businesses. I think that's really, really cool. And it's amazing that we can have that impact in this industry. So that's my overarching goal. Of course I could say the $1 million a month in passive income, or, 100,000 doors, but, of course we're aiming for all of that. But to me, it's the tower.
That is so cool, Tyler. I'd love to see that, man. You got to make sure you invite me on the grand opening there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to get you on the rooftop for the when I fly in a helicopter and land on it.
There you go. Now we're talking.
Man, I visualized it all.
Perfect. So, any special software recommendations for a guest that you use that you really, really love, that's a must in your business? Either one, whether it's the brokerage or the investment business.
Yeah. So, I mean, the underwriting, hands down, you have to have a good set of underwriting tools. Now, you can always create your own. There are some fairly robust pieces of software out there. I created my own with Bruce. If you want to buy those, it's tylercobble.com/models. I mean, it's pretty simple and straightforward. I've got a couple of YouTube videos on how to use those. Underwriting is crucial. I tell everybody, you got to underwrite a deal every day. You got to write an offer every week. I got that from Brandon Turner over at Bigger Pockets, and it works. I mean, I didn't buy a single deal until I started doing that. And in that year, I bought 4. So that's critical. Definitely have some good underwriting. I would also say, so CRS Data, I've started working with them here pretty recently. And they've got a pretty phenomenal offering when it comes to integrating into the tax records and finding comps as well for sales, as well as just all of the ownership data. I've really enjoyed using them. So those are probably the 2 pieces of software that I use almost every day.
That's perfect. Now, the audience who's out there, if you were coaching them or having them kind of get that ounce of courage to jump into this market, I mean, like I said, you were at the right place at the right time. But some of those that are kind of fearful, they've never done these big deals, what would you say to them?
So when I bought my first building, I had no money, right? Like, I was 25, 26 years old. And, there's a reason they call them brokers. You're broke all the time. So, I didn't do any deals because I was like, well, I don't know if I can save up enough money, and I can't do this and I can't do that. And it was always like, okay, well, if I listen to one more podcast, or if I read one more book, or if I have one more meeting with a mentor, I will finally figure it out and we'll be good to go. And that just was not the case until I finally did my first deal. And like I said, that year I bought 3 more after that one. It finally clicked. You have to do the first one. I think the beautiful thing about being in real estate is that you have your real estate license, and people pay realtors broker fees. So on that first building that I bought, it was a $575,000 building. I got paid like $18,000 or $20,000 to buy the building. And so because of that, I called 2 guys, and they're 2 guys that had known me for 3-4 years. I've been working with them forever. And I said, guys, here's my plan. here's what I want to do. And because they know me for so long and I'd never really asked them for anything, I said, look, would you each be willing to throw in 50 grand to make this happen? And they said, absolutely. So they threw in 50 grand. I threw in my 20 grand. And then I took, which bought me 15% equity, right? So 3% of a 20% down payment is 15% of the total of equity in the project. And then I took 10% just for finding the deal and putting it together. So on that first deal, I got 25% of a building with technically $0 out of pocket. So, I realized there's no reason for me to be scared about not having the money because I have my license. I get paid to do this. I can figure it out. So I would just say, just get out there and do it. I mean, there's so much opportunity. And honestly, if you break even or lose a little bit of money on that first project, it will be so worth it. Trust me, it'll be an investment in your education.
That's awesome, Tyler. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Best way to get a hold of you. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, Joe, I appreciate it. So before I say the best way to get a hold of me, I have started a YouTube channel that I'm posting videos on every week on how to invest in commercial real estate. That has by far been the most fun project we've had all year. It's catching on pretty well. So just type in Tyler Cobble in YouTube and it'll pop up. As far as the best way to get a hold of me, DM me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time, probably way more than I should be. But it's worked out really well for the business. We get tons of leads and tons of deals through it. But I respond to every message. So if you DM me on Instagram, it's just at commercial in Nashville with underscores in between the words. So commercial _in_Nashville. I'm posting, tips on commercial real estate, behind the scenes of commercial real estate in Nashville, and you can always, reach out and ask me questions.
You're the man, Tyler. Thank you so much for being on the show, and we wish you well.
You're the man, Joe. Thank you so much.